Vegan Olympians? This should be interesting. Hey everyone, I'm Abbey Sharp. Welcome back to Abby's Kitchen. I know we're a couple months past the Olympics, but your girl took herself a holiday, which gave me a good amount of time to catch up on rewatching some of the games. That and about a million breakdancing memes. And I'm admittedly not a sports girly. I have to work on that because I've got two boys, so I'll have to figure it out. But I am super interested in how athletes fuel for their sport. And clearly, I'm not alone. Throughout the summer, TikTok was buzzing with Olympians sharing what ate in a days, different fueling strategies, and the best foods at the Olympic Village. Can we talk about those chocolate muffins? Because I need to try one. Stat. So in today's video, we'll be talking about the controversial plant-based Olympics diet and how that could have affected the performance of our athletes. Okay, before we go too far, let's talk about my sponsor today, Element. So Element has been a key player in my supplement arsenal for many years now. It definitely helped get me through my breastfeeding, summer tennis sessions, a lot of travel days, hangovers, and a lot more. I actually first learned about Element from a lot of my sports RD colleagues who swear by Element specifically because it has this science-backed electrolyte ratio of 1,000 milligrams sodium, 200 milligrams potassium, and 60 milligrams of magnesium with no colors, sugar, or fillers. And electrolytes have so many important roles in the body, from regulating nerve impulses and hormones and nutrient absorption and fluid balance. So I'm a big fan, and the mango chili has definitely been my personal year-round favorite. Plus, they've got their limited time chocolate medley returning October 22nd. It includes chocolate raspberry, chocolate mint, and chocolate chai. And these are actually designed to be enjoyed hot. So you can add it to your latte, or you can add it to hot chocolate. If you guys like sweet and salty, you're going to love this. But the chocolate medley will be available for a limited time, so you definitely want to get in on it while you can. And right now, Element is offering my viewers a free sample pack with any order. So that is 8 single serving packets free with any Element order. And this is a really great way to try all 8 flavors or to share Element with a salty friend. And don't forget, Element offers no questions asked refunds on all orders if you don't love it. So you can get yours at drinkelement.com/Abbey Sharp. And again, this deal is only available through my link. So you've got to go to drinklmnt.com/Abbey Sharp. Alrighty, folks. I thought I had been to some really, really big Jewish and Italian weddings with hugely massive catering endeavors, but the Olympics is next level big. In fact, it's the largest catering event in the world, with 13 million meals being served over the course of the event. But unlike past Olympic Games, Paris 2024 had a goal to be the most eco-friendly competition to date, with one of its big commitments being to double the number of plant-based meals served. Interestingly, this came at a time in France when tensions around food politics were at an all-time high. So in one corner, we were seeing protests by the agricultural sector to demand greater support for animal farmers. And in the other corner, we got food activists throwing pumpkin soup on the Mona Lisa to draw attention to the environmental toll of the food industry. It's very messy, literally. Now, a lot of you guys know I'm not vegan or plant-based, but I fully support a movement towards eating more plant-based foods. And the research is quite clear that eating more plants is advantageous for our environment and for our health. So when you think about the 13 million meals served at an event like the Olympics, you can appreciate the magnitude of impact that going plant-based at just this one event could have for the earth. The big but here is that this isn't just a Taylor Swift concert or a massive Italian wedding. This is the Olympics. And the people you are feeding are athletes whose performance quite literally hinges on them hitting their nutrition needs basically on the nose. So not surprisingly, athletes who assumedly were not entering the games as vegans were super duper pissed. One retired Olympic swimmer, James Magnuson, went so far as to partially blame this vegan first mentality for the lack of world records at this year's games. Others concurred, calling Paris 2024 cuisine a disaster. Basically, what happened was because the game's mandate was to double down on the plant-based meals, there were significant shortages of athlete staples like chicken and eggs, and athletes then had to ration key sources of protein that throughout their training protocol they had depended on. In a panic, this led some teams to have to fly in their own private chefs to help fill in the gaps. It also resulted in the organizers having to call in reinforcements to the tune of an extra 700 kilos of eggs. Another major complaint was that a lot of the meat that was being served was in fact raw.
It's raw. It's raw!
And while I appreciate that raw meat is a staple delicacy in France, if I were an Olympic team RD, I too would be complaining and recommending that my athletes lay off the tartare. Not only is raw meat a potential foodborne illness hazard, but raw meat is far less digestible than cooked meat because heating helps to break down the tough connective tissues. So the nutrients, including protein, are actually just less bioavailable to the athletes. Plus, your gut needs to work extra hard to break it down, aka cue the GI distress mid-sprint. Not good. Speaking of GI distress, that is another big concern with going abruptly more plant-based before a competition, or really in any situation. Plant-based proteins like beans, legumes, nuts, and seeds are rich in fiber, which is amazing under normal circumstances because it gets you a built-in hunger-crushing combo, plus it helps to support regularity, blood sugar management, and satiety. But there is a big difference between eating for general health and eating to fuel for sport. And as important as fiber is for good health, athletes often want to limit the amount they consume. Basically, excess fiber can be very hard on digestion, resulting in gas, bloating, indigestion, and bowel changes, all of which could potentially hinder performance. So when an athlete has been training on a lower fiber animal protein-based diet, making a sudden shift when they get to the Olympics doesn't give their gut microbes enough time to upregulate their digestion work. So yeah, you could expect they would be bottom burping all the way down the track. And theoretically, it could be a significant shift in fiber intake just depending on how far you took it. So if an athlete was used to getting 150 grams of protein just from chicken and eggs, theoretically, and then they had to abruptly shift to getting that 150 grams of protein from beans, legumes, and soy, they would be unexpectedly adding 88 grams of fiber per day. That is 3 times the recommended total for most adults. Now, obviously this is an extreme example, but it does show how different the diet could be from what they are used to. The other concern with these fiber-rich plant-based foods is how they may affect total calories and macro ranges. Fiber-rich foods are typically more voluminous and are higher on the satiety index, meaning they offer bigger satiety bang for your caloric buck. Again, this is the difference between best practices for your average adult and an Olympian. So a big salad is obviously amazing for good health, but when those 5 cups of kale fill you up, an athlete may have a hard time meeting their protein and specific calorie requirements. So in our chicken and egg versus legume and tofu example, to get the 150 grams of protein you need, you would be eating 777 grams of animal-based foods versus 1,770 grams of plants. And research actually suggests that the volume of food that we eat on a daily basis is actually relatively consistent. So trying to drag yourself through 2.5 times more volume in food just to meet your protein needs would likely be so hard it just wouldn't happen, which may mean that you don't get the macros you're used to training with come competition day. Calories will also differ on an animal versus plant-based high protein diet because there's about 3 times as many calories in beans and legumes per gram of protein versus lean animal proteins like chicken. So again, without proper planning, that's likely going to either increase daily calories or decrease total protein intake or a combination of both. Finally, we know that fiber can blunt the insulin response. So this is great if you're trying to manage your blood sugars, but in a lot of cases, not ideal for athletes. Insulin is like the key that opens the locks on your cells to drive glucose and protein in. So when athletes need to fuel up or replenish their muscles and glycogen stores very quickly, we actually don't want a lot of fiber getting in the way of insulin doing its job super fast. So does this mean that you can't be vegan and succeed in competitive sport? Absolutely not. There are a number of highly successful athletes who follow a plant-based diet at the 2024 Olympics alone. These athletes are just some examples. Not to mention, one of the greatest tennis players of all time, Novak Djokovic, credits his success to his vegan diet. Despite the stereotypical athlete like pounding back these porterhouse steaks and blended up egg whites, there is no reason why athletes cannot thrive on a plant-based diet. But that doesn't mean there's not a ton of criticism around the idea. One of the biggest criticisms around veganism in general, never mind specifically for athletes, is that plant-based proteins are inferior to animal-based protein for building muscle. And technically, yes, animal-based proteins do have a more favorable and balanced amino acid profile for muscle protein synthesis, largely because they contain more leucine, which is the trigger amino acid for muscle growth. That said, when we look at the research comparing high-protein vegan and omnivore diets, we see that, generally speaking, muscle gains can be comparable when macros and training protocols are held equal. Again, as mentioned earlier, achieving those same macros can be a little bit more challenging because you're just working with fewer options, and protein sources often contain other macros, and it's, a little bit more complicated. But with knowledge and a solid plan, it absolutely can be done. In endurance sports, research has also not found any differences on running performance in folks on a plant-based versus omnivore diet. So the key to thriving on a plant-based diet as an athlete really does just come down to careful planning. So number one, you want to make sure you're getting enough calories, which may mean choosing lower fiber, lower volume foods if you're struggling to meet those needs. Number two, pay attention to your protein sources and focus on the best protein bang for your volume buck. This is typically where a high-quality plant-based protein powder would come into play, and it's exactly why we formulated ours with extra leucine. It's also really important to consume a variety of plant-based proteins to cover your amino acid bases for muscle protein synthesis. And three, consider supplements like B12, iron, omega-3s, zinc, and vitamin D, which vegan athletes are at a higher risk of deficiencies in. Research also suggests that vegan athletes can specifically often benefit from creatine and beta-alanine supplementation. So if you want to learn more about creatine, I've got a whole video right here. In conclusion, yes, athletes can and do thrive on a plant-based diet. And if the vast majority of Olympians had been training on a fully plant-based diet, this whole eco-friendly plant-based mandate would have been a non-issue. Their gut would have been adjusted to a higher fiber load, they would have known how to time their higher fiber meals with their training, and they would be better able to determine the best plant-based foods to meet their macros and calories. But game time is not the time to experiment with a drastically different meal plan. Like, talk to anyone who's ever run a marathon or a race. What might be even more important than what they eat pre-run is that they have eaten it a million times before and not had any issues. So if pasta works for you, don't eat steak on race day and vice versa. Practice is key to any athlete's success, and that includes practice with their diet as well. But I would love to hear from you guys about the foods that fuel you best for your activities and sport. And of course, if you're looking for a plant-based protein powder that performs like the gold standard way, complete with added leucine for muscle protein synthesis, sour cherry for muscle recovery, and probiotics for gut health, definitely check out my link below for my new 2-in-1 probiotic protein powder news theory. And I'll see you guys next time on Abby's Kitchen. Bye!